I'm liking this. Oh, Cougar Sports Saturday. Nate Slack bringing us back with some nice tunes, some good vibes on this Saturday afternoon. Look, there's always good vibes when it comes to BYU sports. Is there not a good weekend, Matt, where you're just like, I'm fired up. Like, I'm ready to talk BYU sports. Let's do this. We do it every weekend here on Cougar Sports Saturday, noon to 3, here on your legacy home of the Cougars. And if you miss any part of the show, yeah, there have been tough times where,
Coastal
you and I didn't.
That weekend, I was not happy in 2020.
You and I we're getting ready for our 7th football season together on this show, which is pretty crazy. It's flown by. But, there's been some tough times for football and men's basketball,
How happy were you in Tempe last fall? Huh?
I was, I was, this kid, I wasn't expecting this, but just since you put me on the spot, I was almost surprised with how well they fought in the second half that I was kind of like, okay. Like, I wasn't taking it as a win for BYU, but I thought they showed a lot more fight than I was expecting at halftime. At halftime, I thought they're going to lose 42-0, and Scadaboo's just going to run wild, and this is going to get ugly. So they showed the fact that they were close kind of surprised me. So it is what it was. But that, it's funny you bring that up, that game though. That was a moment. I think I'll point to it too, and it kind of conjures up memories. The Deseret News pointed it out too. But we were down on the field. Brian Santiago, the new AD at BYU, he was down on the field because after that game, the outcome kind of got overshadowed by the behavior of the Arizona State fans storming the field early, and then all their choice words to BYU players and administrators. Credit to someone like Brian Santiago. He kept that thing calm. Same with Tom Holmoe. I even looked at some video on my phone. You could see both him and Santiago and Holmoe trying to keep things in check, talking to security, because I don't know if you agreed with me, but agree with me. I thought that game, it was going to end in a fight. And sure enough, yes. It didn't. And BYU luckily got out of there, and cooler heads prevailed. And it was kind of the message was set, the tone was set from Kalani, Holmoe, and Santiago. I thought they did a really good job in that spot.
Brian, at one point, I remember this vividly because I was like, you're dang right, Brian. He was telling officials, we're not playing this down until the field is clear. And I'm like, absolutely.
That's right.
Get these students off the field. And then Tom said to somebody, he said, we're not going to clear the field. We just got to make it safe. And he was being right. They weren't going to clear the field. But also I was kind of like, you know what? Open up the gates and funnel these bums out of here. Like, so I do vividly remember those two working with officials and administrators at Arizona State during a chaotic moment. And I was impressed by both of their calm demeanor and their leadership in that moment, because I was fired up. The things that we saw and heard on the field in that moment were those are things you don't want people to experience. And for them to be level-headed, I thought was really impressive in that moment.
It really was. And Brian Santiago will look to probably avoid any sort of premature field stormings. Hopefully he's not dealing with that, and BYU's not experiencing that, because that means they're getting close to losing games potentially. So they don't have to deal with that, hopefully. But, Brian Santiago is going to lead the charge for BYU athletics, and a lot of emotion is behind BYU sports. And he brought up an interesting story, Matt, during his introductory news conference of what BYU sports means. And it was a story reference that from a conversation he had and BYU administrators had with Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints President Henry B. Eyring from years ago.
Little over 20 years ago, even before Tom got here, we were privileged to sit in a room with President Henry B. Eyring of the First Presidency. At the time, Elder Eyring came and spoke to us and answered questions. And one of our coaches at the time asked him a very direct question: what's the expectation? And he responded with the word excellence. And this coach, wanting to press more, said, what does that mean? And he said this, and this is the key, and this is what the charge that we feel, and this is the charge going forward. He said, to be nationally relevant and do it the right way. because if we are nationally relevant and we do it the right way, the world will want to know who we are. And we can tell the story through these remarkable student athletes.
That's good stuff, man. I couldn't agree more. I think that is exactly what the mission should be in this next chapter of BYU athletics, is do it the right way. You always have to do it the right way. You do not want to shine a negative light on this university, because there is a microscope on this university, and it's important to do it the right way, but you have to win. That's the only way to be nationally relevant. And I think you've seen it, kind of getting away from sports and just looking at it holistically. The times that there has been the most interest in the university, and thus the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is when there's national relevance. And sports is a fantastic way to shine a light on a lot of the goodness at that university and a lot of the goodness that comes from the church. And I think if Brian can deliver on that, that's going to mark a successful run for him as the AD.
One of the individuals that was probably in that room for that commentary from President Henry B. Eyring was BYU AD at the time, Val Hill. He'll join us next here on Cougar Sports Saturday. We'll talk more about Brian Santiago being hired as BYU's new athletic director, continuing to roll on here on KSL News Radio.